first time, there are 4, and some would even say 5. Penny, where are you? We talked in the line yesterday about there's really a 5th generation kind of coming into the workplace now. Some are calling it Gen At or Gen 2020. We're going to talk really just down through the millennials today. A lot of these hold true. I'm going to take questions all the way through as well as at the end. So if you get puzzled or you have something to say, please holler out, raise your hand. If my back is turned to you, which it may well be, just shout. All right? Let's have a conversation about this today. So traditionalists, greatest generation, baby boomers, Gen X, really millennials and Gen At, and we'll touch on Gen 2020, which is the youngest generation currently entering the workforce, right out of school, which would mean my kids. What shapes a generation more than its music? You know, how do we identify? Who remembers the Andrews Sisters? There we go. Theoretically, it's supposed to keep going. There we go. The greatest generation. These are the folks who either remember or whose parents remember the Depression. This is World War I into World War II. Can everybody see the slides okay on the screen? Thanks. They're also known as the silent generation. This is one of the most famous snapshots ever taken of this generation, coming back from war, coming home. Born between 1922 and 1945, now in their 60s to 80s. And we actually have a fair number of these folks in our Community Action Network. We have an interesting conundrum in Community Action. So many people came to this network out of the civil rights movement, out of the social justice movement, and they stayed. Unlike a lot of other movements, you guys are right, the lights are really bright. Unlike so many other things in so many workplaces where people kind of come and go, once people get in community action, they tend to stay put. We actually have a director in Georgia who is, I kid you not, 92 years old and still kicking. Okay? People tend to stay because they love this work, not to mention what the recession did to our 403B accounts, right? Okay? So people tend to stick around, but that gives us a real challenge in these next few years. We are going to have more retirements than almost any other nonprofit or for-profit network in the country. How many new directors are in the room who've been a director less than 5 years? Execs. Hands up. Okay, thank you. How many execs have been in place for more than 10 years? Keep your hands up, high. How many for more than 20 years? Okay, you guys are anomalous. There's more new directors than there are in most places. Some good changeover, some transference, which is a good thing. It is a very good thing. We need this to happen. So defining events of the traditionalists. We are talking about the World Wars, stock market collapse. How many people have folks, grandparents probably for most of this room, who didn't trust banks? How many remember people stashing cash because they were afraid there would be another run on the bank? I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding. Make it up, let's see, use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. That's this generation. If they weren't in it, they remember it. Another thing that defines us beyond music and beyond events is the dangers of our generation. This was a generation that saw the atomic bomb. They knew what could happen. For the first time, warfare became less than personal. Okay? It was bombs falling in far places, mass devastation. Okay? The world wasn't as safe as it had been. Let's talk a little bit more about the characteristics of the traditionalists. Now bear in mind, as we go through, I'll reiterate this. These are generalizations about generations. Okay? Typically true. I'm not going to tell you much that you haven't thought about or know. What I'm going to try to do is help you pull it together in a way that makes sense for working together across the generations. And for the record, my iPhone is my remote control for my slideshow. I am not checking email. Just thought I'd get that out there. Okay? These folks tend to be very reliable. In on time, you have to kick them out when they have influenza because they are going to be in the office come hell or high water, right? They're going to be in on snow days, they're going to be in on personal days, they're going to be in on everything. They tend to be very frugal. They tend to be the make it up, make it do, or do without generation. Patriotic and in a kind of traditional sense. You saw our great folks coming in with the flags on Wednesday. This is the generation that would never dream of not rising for the flag. Never dream of wearing a hat when it came in. It just wouldn't occur to them, typically, not to do that. Very traditionally patriotic. Now, they're also very respectful of authority. If the government or someone says to do something, they typically do it. And they don't question a lot in general. Rule adherent, very hardworking, and at the same time, a strong set of moral obligations. Do what's right. You do what's right no matter what, right? Am I making it hard to tape by wandering around? I'm constitutionally incapable of standing behind a podium, so they gave me a walk around. Workplace behaviors. How does this translate into folks' work? How many of you have some traditionalists in your workplace? People who are 60 and up. Okay? Let's talk a little bit about what that looks like in the workplace. And I want some feedback from those of you who put your hands up. Is this the kind of behavior you typically see from these people? Okay? Loyal to the employer. This is still the generation that if you worked hard and stayed with the same employer and retired there, that's where your loyalty was. It was to the company. Very effective and very warm interpersonal skills. Very much a one-on-one discussions, very much interested in other people, in getting to know you. Work ethic, their work ethic was timeliness, putting in the hours and working hard. Absolutely, you can count on them to be there when they say they're going to be, and they will work hard the entire time they're there, and then they will go. They are very willing to learn. They accept, though, command and control management. They're the last generation that really accepted, here's the rule, here's the hierarchy, here's what we do. And they're like, okay, that's the rules, that's what we'll do. Okay. You're going to see that changing in the next generations. Does this reflect what you know of your 60 and up employees, generally speaking? Looking for the folks who had their hands up about having traditionalists in the workplace. In general, does this match your experience? Okay. Are you awake? I'm just checking that everybody's still in the room, because, you know, I really can't see. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the baby boom. Who remembers the Big Chill? Generations are informed by their music. Remember that movie? Bunch of people getting together, catching up. Exactly. This is the era of the baby boomers. Can you guys all see the cartoon in the back? How to Panic a Baby Boomer Then and Now? Bad acid, bad assets. I was actually born on the first day post-baby boom, so I like to think of myself as Gen X with a baby boomerizing. Okay? If you're on the cusp, just like in horoscopes, you tend to have more characteristics of a previous or latter generation. If you are especially close to your grandparents, you may have more characteristics of their generation, including knowing all the words to all the songs the Andrews Sisters ever wrote. Okay? Performed. I don't think they actually wrote. So what are baby boomers like? This is when yuppies came to be. This is the generation that is totally responsible for those funky drug ads on TV where you're not sure what the drug does, but there's a happy couple wandering in the fields together. You're not quite sure what they're doing, but they're happy. You can't tell if it's you know, an enhancement drug or an allergy drug because they're flowers in the fields. This generation is more than anything else has shaped the workplace that we all work in now. Regardless of your agency, whether you're a for-profit or a non-profit or a hospital, the baby boomers shaped it. And believe it or not, the baby boomers have shaped the next two generations. Whether you like to admit it or not, folks, we're your fault. Okay? We are totally your fault. You will see why. So defining events. These folks are now in their 50s and early 60s. Kennedy. Every one of you who are a baby boomer knows where you were when Kennedy was shot. You know about Martin Luther King. You know where you were when that tragedy happened. Right? You remember Woodstock, whether it was your thing or not. All right, rock on. You remember that, and you know how much it informed politics, music, the way the generation thought of themselves. They defined themselves in terms of these events. The civil rights era. Boy, have we come a long way, baby. We got a lot further to go, but think about it. You would never have seen an interracial couple on television in the 60s. Now, only, what, 50 some years later, the most conservative companies in the country have interracial ads for drugs. There's intergender ads. Hell, was it Cheerios who got in such trouble for having two moms? Okay. We have come a long way, baby. Now, we do still have work to do, as our network is here to attest. But think about what a short time frame in the scope of history and generations that has been. Think about how much the baby boomers and the traditionalists have seen change in workplaces, in media. Television came in, right? All this good stuff. The feminist movement. By God, if we want to be barefoot in the kitchen, it's because we want to be, right? I personally like being barefoot, and I actually like to cook, but you know, that's a whole different ballgame. Television sets. How many of you remember not having a television set? Getting your first one, right? And my heavens, when color television came in, right? Who were the bad guys? Who are the bad guys in all the movies you can think of? This plant is really going to get on my nerves. No, you're fine. What? Black hats? Russians. It was the Cold War era. The bad guys always had accents like this. I'll get you James Bond and your little dog too. Oh wait, Wizard of Oz. Right? Bad guys were the Cold War era. This was John le Carré. This was the spy who came in from the cold, right? It was very personal. Thank you so much for wandering with the plant, Becky. Burnham Wood comes to community action. All right, for those of you who don't know, that's Macbeth. All right, so the Cold War, that was our bad guys. Let's talk about some of the general characteristics of the boomers. Guys, gals, I'm warning you. This is not personal, but it may come a little close to home. Okay? What is it about people that makes them a boomer? They're optimistic and they're driven. They are used to being the focus of attention, and they want their opinion to count, individually and as a generation. They are still in control of things like Congress, state houses, regardless of party. The baby boomers are still in charge of our institutions for the most part. This is the me generation, though. This is a big shift from the traditionalists, who were much more about the greater global good. This is about, how is my life going to look? What is going to happen to me and my folks? Resisting traditional aging. All those ads on TV, the wrinkle-free, everything else. This is you guys. Okay? You are totally behind this, because baby boomers don't want to age. They want to be cool and hip and mountain climb in their 80s, and more power to you, for the record. And thank you, by the way, for supporting an entire pharmaceutical industry geared to not aging. They want to have it all. This is the generation which for women was, hey, I can be a mom. Do you remember the commercial? You know, I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan. Right. This is the generation that wants to have it all. And at the same time, and ideally, although we joke about millennials wanting instant gratification, have you ever seen a baby boomer who wants a new piece of technology that just came out? They are at the Apple store faster than I am, okay, which is fast. But they really do want to have it all. How does this translate, though, into the workplace that we live in now? Again, we're talking yuppies. Work comes first. Much more important than getting to basketball games or doing other things. Work is the focus. Okay? Loyal to the company still. This is still about, you know, put in your time. Working long, working hard, but here's a little bit of a change from the traditionalists. Being seen doing it. Having that recognition that I'm not just doing it for the greater good, but I need you to know that I'm working hard. How many of us are guilty of saying, oh yeah, I was here till 8 o'clock last night, but you only say that when other people are listening. Totally get it, right? Okay? Makes sense. They believe in, they champion, and they evaluate others on their work ethic. What is the work ethic? This is when you start to get to, those kids don't have a work ethic, right? They do, by the way, have a work ethic, but it doesn't look the same anymore. Okay? looks a little different from the millennials. But this generation, the work ethic is being present, being in the office. This is the generation that typically telework is a little bit funky. They're not sure those people are really doing work if they're not in the office. Right? Whether they are or not, and sometimes they're not. Focusing on teamwork, lots of meetings. This is a generation that loves meetings. We just love to meet, right? We sit down, we talk about stuff, a lot. And some incredible stuff came out of this culture. Including Pamela Friends. You asked for that, Pam. Putting in your time, though, is really important to folks. You'll get your chance to lead, you just have to put in your time, right? This is not what other generations really want to hear. They want expertise valued over actually being there 15 years, 10 years, 5 years, whatever that threshold is.